מחמת גופו. This means that it is inherently muktzeh, because it is of no use on Shabbat. It is put out of one's mind, muktzeh. This category includes rocks, animals, coins, straw, dust, trees, leaves, all types of waste, and corpses. This type of muktzeh may not be moved even if one wants to use the item for permissible purpose. For example, one may not pick up a rock to use it as a doorstopper or a nutcracker. If one wants to prevent the rock from becoming muktzeh, he must either mentally designate it for the desired purpose before Shabbat, or use it for that purpose at least once during the week.
Okay, so that's the classic. Sticks, stones, things which are not for use on Shabbat are. And look on page 165. I'm just going to skip ahead because we don't have all the time in the world. Animals are muktzeh since they serve no purpose on Shabbat. That's the second paragraph in the end on page 165. Only in a time of need one may take hold of them and drag them in order to feed or protect them. One may not pick them up. House pets are not standard animals. When he talks about animals, he's talking about animals from the wild or animals which are not pets. House pets which are normally played with and picked up are not muktzeh. Well, this is his opinion. There is such an opinion that you can be lenient regarding house pets, but it's not agreed by every rabbi. And essentially, animals are muktzeh. And maybe if you own a pet and you always pet him and you always play with him, so it's designated for moving and touching, that's okay. But in general, you should know that animals should not be moved. They're muktzeh. Okay, skip to the next page. The next category of muktzeh, and that was category 1, muktzeh machamat gufo. Number 2 is muktzeh machamat chesronkis, valuable items that have no use on Shabbat. And people always take care not to move, except for a specific purpose for which they are designed, to ensure the items do not get damaged or lost. Muktzeh machamat chesronkis, for example, knives designed for ritual slaughter, or the leather looking, are muktzeh. Even if he wants to cut his food with them, he may not pick them up. They're so expensive, you don't usually do that. Included in this category are musical instruments, smartphones. Nowadays, I use my smartphone as a paperweight. We would throw it around. Maybe when he wrote the book, it was more expensive. I don't know. Some people still take good care of their smartphones. But usually, electronics, they're a little sensitive and expensive, and so you don't just use them, to hold up a pot of, hot food or something like that. So that's probably muktzeh machamat chesronkis. That means loss of money. Radios, tape recorders. Anybody see a tape recorder? Expensive or fragile music players, cameras, and mixers. Again, cameras. So cameras, people used to have cameras. Now everybody has a camera in their pocket and their cell phone. Well, not most people anyways. And it's not so expensive that people don't use it. But if it's more expensive, you get the idea anyways. This may not be used even for a permissible purpose. For example, paperweight. Similarly, one may not wrap himself in an expensive piece of fabric that has been set aside for sewing. In contrast, a valuable fragile item is frequently used on Shabbat, such as gold washed eyeglasses or magnifying glass for reading, is not muktzeh. So it has to be set aside that you don't use it. And then another example of muktzeh machamat chesronkis are money. Interesting. Money, like a bill, 20 shekel bill or 50 shekel bill. So you don't just use it lightly. If there's a spill, you're not going to wipe it up with money because it's expensive. So you can't handle it because it's muktzeh machamat chesronkis. He says other documents, identity cards, credit cards, stamps, bus tickets, parchment to be used by a scribe, stationery paper, Nowadays, this piece of paper, believe it or not. Well, nowadays paper is much cheaper than it used to be. You buy a stack of A4 paper this size. Some people would even use it to wipe up a spill because it's so cheap. But it used to be more expensive. And still, you can have paper which is more expensive, and then you wouldn't use it for anything else except for the printer or for writing. So that's, even though each piece of paper is very cheap, it would be fall into the category of muktzeh machmat chasron kis, because you guard it for only its purpose, not to waste it. You wouldn't waste it on some other purpose. So that's an interesting one. Blank paper. If it's been written on, if it advanced like a book, then it's for your use. You want to read what's written there, that's fine. But blank paper, which is designated for use, and you're not going to waste it for anything else, that's muktzeh machmat chasron kis. Wall clocks, little pictures. Okay, that's category number 2. Let's go on to category number 3. Category number 3 we said is basis to the asur and conscious place. Here we said that muktzeh goes so far that let's say you had an expensive camera, and on Erev Shabbat you put it very carefully right here on the table so that it's out of harm's way. And then in the middle of Shabbat you say, you know what? I need an extra table because new guests came over. Can't move the table either because it became a basis, the davar asur. That expensive camera we said is muktzeh, and because you placed the camera consciously, you wanted to store it over Shabbat on that table. That table became prohibited as well, so you can't use the table either. Let's see it inside. Yosef, want to read the number 5 for us on page 167?
This is the Balazur in conscious placement. If a muktzeh was placed on top non-muktzeh item with the intention that it stays there all of Shabbat, then the permitted item becomes muktzeh as it serves a basis base for a forbidden object. For example, if one placed money on a table, then even though the table is not itself muktzeh, since he placed muktzeh money on it, the table becomes muktzeh because it is now a basis the davar asur. In other words, the decision to place money on the table implies consent not to use the table on Shabbat, making the table muktzeh just like the money on it. Even if the money were to fall off during Shabbat, it would not matter. Since the table was muktzeh during being Hashem, it remains muktzeh all of Shabbat. In contrast, if one did not intend for the money to stay on the table over Shabbat, but it simply left it there by mistake, then the table does not become muktzeh, since he did not decide to make it a basis for something muktzeh.
Okay, so here we have an interesting law, that this law, basis, only is if it's intentionally placed there, not if it's just left there by accident. So we skip to the next paragraph. Let's say you have left a laptop on top of a book.
The same applies to a laptop left on top of a book, valuable candlesticks left on the tray, valuable knives left in a case, or raw potatoes left in a drawer, or a tzedakah box left on the bima. If these items were intentionally placed there, then whatever they are resting upon becomes a basis, the davar asur, and it is muktzeh. If they were forgotten there, the base does not become muktzeh.
Because that really depends on your intention. Really, is this its normal place where you're storing it, where you're placing it on purpose? If you just left it there by accident, then it doesn't complicate things. So take a look at the next page, and this is the most practical implementation of this halacha is when you forget something in your pocket. Look on page 168. If one finds money, go ahead and say.
If one finds money or other muktzeh items in his pocket, he may assume that they were forgotten there, so his clothes do not become a basis. However, in order that he not continue to carry around muktzeh in his pocket, he should try to shake it out. If he is embarrassed to do so in public, or if he is worried that the muktzeh item will get lost, he may continue to wear this item of clothing until he reaches a place where he can shake out the muktzeh without fear of losing it or embarrassing himself.
Okay, this is very common, right? I forgot there's some coins in my pocket. That's it. So that's why I said it actually says in the poskim that every Shabbat, before Shabbat starts, you should check your pockets to make sure they're empty of muktzeh items. But if you didn't, then obviously it's unintentional. You don't always keep things in your pocket and leave them there overnight. So you didn't intend to keep your wallet in your pocket. If you do, then it would become a basis, but it doesn't become a basis for the asur, and therefore you can move the pants. You still can't move the muktzeh, so you have to shake it out if possible. You don't have to do it on the spot, like it's on fire. Get rid of it as soon as possible, but you're allowed to move over to a place where it's convenient to shake it out. Sometimes I take my coat, and it's already Shabbat, and in my coat I left, maybe some documents or some money, and so can I use the coat on Shabbat? Yes, the coat can be used if I shake out the muktzah. So shake out the muktzah, and then I use the coat. Okay, next. Yeah, I told you the example. This is important. You may see it in some homes, so you might come across this. Let's go to number 6. Idan, you want to read for us, please?
If an assortment of items have been placed on a tray or table, some muktzeh and some not, the muktzeh status of the tray depends upon which items one considers to be more important. If the muktzeh items are more important, then the tray becomes a basis. If the non-muktzeh items are more important, the tray does not become a basis and it is not muktzeh. For example, let us say the Shabbat candles and the challah are on the table. If the candlesticks are made of clay, the challahs are more important, and the table may be moved. However, if the candlesticks are silver, which makes them muktzeh machmat chesron kis, they are more important than the challahs, and the table becomes a basis and may not be moved.
So you can still use the table. You just can't. You can't move the table, right? Can't move the table. That's why what some people do is they have their let's say these are my candlesticks. Okay. Ready? See the candlesticks? I don't know if you can see this, but if I put this on my table, then I want to switch the tablecloth. So I want to lift up the tray and move it so that I can switch the tablecloth and then put it back. But I can't, because the candlesticks are muktzeh. And the tray which is on it is muktzeh, because it's a basis for the varasur. Now what if I put on it also, what some people do is they put on the same tray, next to my candlesticks, I'll put a siddur. This is a beautiful siddur. This is very expensive. It's very important to me. I cherish it a lot. So now, when I set up my candles on my table, I have a tray that is a basis for the davar asur and the davar mutar. And so when the candles blow out, when they are used up, when the candles are lit, you're not allowed to move it, because any touch could make the oil come closer to the wick, and you'll be guilty of lighting a fire or extinguishing the fire. You don't touch moving candles when it's lit. You don't move a candle when it's lit. But after it's lit, well, so then, can I move the tray? The tray is a basis for davar asur and mutar. If the davar mutar is more expensive, more valuable to you than the candlesticks, then you can do as I said. I'm not going to touch the candles. I'm going to move the tray. And then I put the tray aside, switch the tablecloth, and then I can put it back if that's where I want it to be. You can put it back because the tray does not become muktzeh, does not become a basis only for the davar asur. Some people put jewelry next to their candlesticks on the tray, so that's for sure more expensive. And then they can move the tray. Other people have a special spot on the wall or on the side cabinet where they put their candles, so they don't have to move it to change the tablecloth. But some people, nowadays that's very easily done, because The candles we light are not really for light. We don't need the light. We have electricity. But in the day, you wanted the candles on the table to give you light to see your food, to be able to enjoy your meal. So that was a little bit of a challenge for the laws of muktzeh. How can you, move the table or the tray? It's the candlesticks are muktzeh. The tray is muktzeh because it's a basis. That's where you put the candles on purpose on this tray. So you collect the wax, whatever. It's pretty. You can't move the entire tray unless you play this trick. But now, as I said, nowadays, since we don't need the candles directly on the table, it's quite traditional to have the candles on the table, but it could mess you up. Because then if you didn't put something mutar on the tray, you can't move it. And then you have a dirty tablecloth all Shabbos. It's not really nice. So a lot of people just avoid it. They put the candles on the side of the room, or I hang mine from the ceiling. I hang mine on top of the table. So the table doesn't become a cease for the candles, and I don't get into any trouble. But this is a little bit of a practical example of the laws of basis, the davar asur. Sometimes the question is about a drawer. So in my top drawer, I have my cutlery, knives and forks and spoons. But I also put a marker. My wife likes to keep it there. She prepares some food, writes on top of the silver foil what it is. So for leftovers, we know exactly, you have a lot of guests. It's hard to keep things straight. So she'll write on it, we have all sorts of dietary needs. This is without gluten, this is without wheat, this is without eggs, this one. So it's good to mark things. So in the drawer we have markers, which are muktzeh, kli shenalachto le'isur, that's used for, that's number 7. We're going to see that markers are muktzeh. And then we have knives and forks, which are not muktzeh. They're for eating. They're vessels. They're designed for use. So the drawer, what do you think? Does it become muktzeh or not? Can I open my drawer and take out the knives and forks?
They're more valuable than a pen.
They're more valuable than the pen. Usually, I think so. That's my estimation. That the pen is not very expensive nowadays, the marker. And so therefore it's a basis for the davar asur ve'hamutar. And you're allowed to open the drawer. Of course, I'm not going to touch the markers, Shabbat, but I can open the drawer and take out but there could be another drawer where, for example, some people have a drawer that's full of documents, where you keep your wallet, and you keep your passport maybe, and I don't know, maybe your birth certificate. I don't know. There's like a drawer for like important stuff. It might be muktzeh to use that drawer. That's its place. You put it there intentionally. The storage there. If the papers are muktzeh, there's no reason to use them on Shabbat. Then the drawer itself becomes muktzeh. Even if you got also in the drawer you have a few kippah clips, and you have kippahs in there too, maybe. Which is more expensive? Which is more important? Probably those documents are more important. And the wallet probably is more expensive than the kippah clips. So the whole drawer becomes basis, if that's its normal place. So you watch everybody's thinking about their home. Do I have a drawer like that? Think about regarding Shabbat, that you should have a drawer or have anything in there that you need, that you would need on Shabbat. Can you move the table? Let's say, okay, I've been talking about moving the tray, right? The tray off the table so you can change the tablecloth. Let's say there's spills underneath the table, and I want to wash the floor. We live in an area that we have flooring, we're not on the ground floor, it's not dirt, we're allowed to sweep. And washing, we talked about how to wash it off with a squeegee, not with something that's going to, like a towel that you're going to squeeze out, but you want to take care of the spill properly. So you want to move the whole table to the side. Or you want to play a game with the kids. You want to move the whole table to the side. Well, let's say I put my candle straight on the table. There's candlesticks, obviously. So the entire table became a basis for the candles. Can't move the table. Can't move it to the side of the room. That's why many people put it on a tray for halachic reasons, if you have the candles on the table. But let's say you have another table that on the side that has your computer or your radio. Well, that's muktzeh. So the table itself is muktzeh. But I need another table. Guests came. I want to move off the radio and use the table. You can't. Because not only is the radio muktzeh, but the table became a basis. That's its normal place. You put it there on purpose. Before Shabbat started. It's a basis for the device. Okay, next. The fourth category that Rabbi Menachem introduced to us is Kelim Shemalachtam Yisur, number 7. Idan, want to read for us, please, on page 170.
Kelim Shemalachtam Yisur are objects normally used for activities that are prohibited on Shabbat. Some examples are hammers, scissors, needles, pliers, and phone books. Since they are designed for things that are prohibited on Shabbat, they are muktzeh. Nevertheless, since
Anybody know what a phone book is? You still use it? Rarely, but yeah. Okay.
Nevertheless, since they can be used for permissible activities as well, one does not put them out of his mind completely over Shabbat. Therefore, the sages established an intermediate category for such items. On one hand, they are muktzeh, and one may not move them, even if they were left in a place where they are likely to be damaged or stolen. On the other hand, one may move them in two cases: the tzorech gufam or the tzorech mekoman. Tzorech gufo means using the kli shemelachto leisur to do something permissible, like using a hammer to crack nuts, scissors to open a milk bag, a needle to remove a thorn, pliers to open and shut a faucet whose handle is missing, and a telephone book to look up an address. If the same goal can be attained without using the kli shemelachto leisur, it should not be used. The tzorech mekomo means moving the kli shemelachto leisur to use the space it occupies. Thus, if such an object was left on the table and one wishes to eat at, the bed he wishes to lie in, or the chair he wishes to sit upon, he may move it. Similarly, if such an item was left on the floor in a spot where people will likely trip over it, one may move it. If the door of a washing machine was left open and is getting in the way, it may be closed. If a kli shemelachto leisur makes it difficult to open or close a window, it may be moved.
Okay, so this is the weakest type of muktzeh. It's an item which it's a vessel, but because it's usually used for something asur, it's forbidden. And so it can be used, it can be moved if it's in the way, or if you need to use it in a permissible way, like you said, the hammer to crack a nut. So this is kli shemelachto. That's only these leniencies of moving it for the space only applies to this fourth category. It's only the type of muktzeh, the easiest type of muktzeh, the weakest type of muktzeh, like pens, markers. It's called the kli shemelachto leisur. And therefore, if I need the space, I can move it. Candles, bigger problem. But now this is just a marker. This is a marker. So anyway, in any case, the truth is, even if I had in my drawer cutlery and also some pens, well, I can move the drawer even if the pens were more expensive. Because it's a kli shemelachto leisur. The type of muktzeh it is allows you to move it to get at something else, because you need the space of it, or you need to use the drawer. So in any case, that using the drawer that has pens and pencils in it is allowed. Goes on to say here on page 171, electrical appliances, fans, washing machines, refrigerators, are considered kli shemelachto leisur. However, those with the heating element are considered to be muktzeh machamat gufam.
I'm confused.
Okay. Two types of muktzeh. To keep it simple, two types of muktzeh. Muktzeh that's inherent muktzeh, something which is never used for anything else. Something which is, therefore, it's out of your mind totally. Sticks, stones, and here he's saying also refrigerator, something which is, going to be biblically prohibited to turn on, like an oven or a radiator. There's a heating element, so you can't move them at all, no matter what. But there's a weaker type of muktzeh, a muktzeh which it's prohibited only because normally it's used for doing an isser. Like a pen is usually used for writing, but it's not. So that is called kli shemalachto leisur, and the sages said you don't totally put them out of your mind because you might need to move them. You can use them for other things and use the pen as a paperweight. You can use the pen as a paperweight. This was a more severe type. He said maybe because it's so expensive, you would never use it for anything else. So that you wouldn't use as a paperweight. I said nowadays we do, but if it was something very expensive, like an expensive camera, you wouldn't just put it around. So that would be not to be used even in a permissible way. Whereas a pen is not expensive and it can be used for other things. So like a hammer can be used to crack a nut. Or the most common example is you forgot something on your bed or on the table, or something's in the way, and now you want to walk there or you want to sit there. If it's the weaker type of muktzeh, it's just a klisha malachto leisur. It's just a vessel normally used for forbidden things, but it could have other uses. Then you can move it out of the way because you need to use the space where it is. Does that clarify things? Still not clear.
The line is really blurry between what's muktzeh lechalutin, but what's like chetzi chetzi. Like, because like you can use anything as paperweight. I mean,
Yeah, but you wouldn't if it's very expensive,
okay.
right?
Yeah. What if we declare it before Shabbat?
If you're going to use it, then if your intention is to use it, then it becomes not set aside. Like we said, those expensive items that you wouldn't use for anything else. If you choose to be very cavalier with your expensive things, then it's probably okay. Although you have to be honest with yourself. So most items that we see around muktzeh are usually the weaker type of muktzeh. Keep it simple. Sticks, stones, things which have never been designated for use, those are inherent muktzeh. It cannot be used even for gufam or mekomam. But
And money.
money, also money, yeah.
But most things are like,
Yeah. Most electronic devices, if they're not expensive, very expensive ones. It's not like your hi-fi stereo that, you don't want any of the kids to ruin it because they if it smashes on the floor, ouch. So that's a more serious type of muktzeh. But most other items, that people handle and we have around us are klisha malachto leisur, and they can be moved to gufo or makomo for the sake of their using them in a permitted way, or to push them to use the spot where they've been placed. Okay? So it's, you're right, it's a little bit a fine point. Even in the footnote, he makes it even more, gives another few examples of sort of gufo. This is any item that is not a kli but used for an activity prohibited on Shabbat, such as firewood, kerosene, bar soap, thick liquid soap. We don't use that on Shabbat. Laundry detergent. We don't do our laundry on Shabbat. Shoe polish. It's considered muktzeh lachmat gufo. That's like money, like we said, may not be moved even l'tzorach gufo or l'tzorach makom. So there are these two types, two levels of muktzah, and be aware of that. Okay, let's continue. Without getting into all the examples here, what is allowed? What is allowed are kli shemalachto leheter, vessel used for permitted uses. Switch, please skip to section 9, page 173. Stephen, how are you today? Yeah, your Shabbat was good?
Yes, good.
All right. Hopefully your apartment won't leak. Sometimes we have leaks when it starts to rain. Our apartments, especially when we're renting, we never know. Right? It's the balabait has been keeping it up, but hopefully it'll stay warm. Okay. You're on the top floor?
No. In the middle.
The middle?
Yeah.
So maybe you're safe. Okay. So there's that the same.
It's not the same.
Okay. Kli shemalachto leheter. Kalim that are used, Steve, will you read first number 9?
Kelim they are used for permitted purposes. Kelim she melaktam lehete, a category which include table, chair, beds, pillow, thermoses, clocks, and broom, may be moved for any reason, though one may not move them for no reason at all. In Nehemiah's time, when people failed to observe Shabbat, the sages decreed that no kelim should be moved at all. When meticulous observance was restored, they permitted moving kelim she melaktam lehete, but left the decree in place for moving them for no reason. The idea was for people to pay attention to what they do with their hand on Shabbat, making sure not to move kelim without a reason, keep people aware of Shabbat, and make it more likely that they will not end up transgressing any Shabbat prohibition. Furthermore, on Shabbat, one aspires to inner peace and restfulness. This includes one's hands as well. They should be at rest, not busy moving and carrying things unnecessary. In contrast, no decree ever limited to the movement of food, books, clothes, and jewelry, because they make Shabbat enjoyable. One may move them even without a reason. The poskim disagree regarding kelim. They are used very frequently, such as cutlery, plates, and cups. According to some, these kelim possesses the same halakhic status as food and may thus be moved for no reason. Others maintain that they have the same status as kelim she melaktam lehete, which may not be moved without a reason. Since mukzeh is itself a rabbinic law, the lenient position is the primary one. Though, since many poskim are inclined to be stringent, it is preferable to take their opinion into account and to avoid moving cutlery and dishes for no reason.
Okay, so if you have a spoon and you just, or a cup, just playing with it for no reason, you're not drinking out of it, you're just sort of fiddling. You're not aware of Shabbat if you're fiddling. So technically it can be permitted because it's a vessel, it's something that's designated for, it's a kli shemalachto leheter, so you're allowed to move it. But there is room to be machmir, not just to fiddle on Shabbat. Okay, now how do you define something as muktzeh? When do you define something as muktzeh? That definition starts during Bein Hashmashot. Who can tell me what is Bein Hashmashot?
From Shkia to Tzedek.
Good. It's the twilight time when Shabbat enters. Friday afternoon, after the sun sets, there's a period called Bein Hashmashot, between the suns. It's actually a little bit after sunset for a little while until it becomes fully night. That is the time period where the onset of Shabbat really. So, now, one practical example that you really have to be aware of is, for example, wet clothes. Wet clothes are muktzah. Nobody wears wet clothes. Totally soaking clothes. You take them out of the washing machine, or you take them. You can't use them now. Nobody puts on wet clothes. You have to dry them. When they become dry, then they can be used. Sometimes you do your laundry and you hang it up, then on Shabbat you say, well, I need to change my clothes got dirty. Can I use those clothes that were hanging? You have to try to figure out, were they dry enough at the beginning of Shabbat? Because at the beginning of Shabbat it gets defined as muktzeh or not muktzeh, something that's set aside for you. So it was totally soaking at the beginning of Shabbat. You can't use it for the entire Shabbat, even though they're going to subsequently dry. Now it's the afternoon, they're dry. But because they were too wet to use during Bein HaShamashot, it becomes forbidden for the entire Shabbat. So that's an example of something we have to be aware of when you're drying. If they were dry enough that, in a pinch you could use it during Bein HaShamashot, then, even though now it's totally dry, it's okay. You didn't dry them. They drew from the air, but they dried out from the air. But if they were damp and if they were wearable, it's good enough. You didn't put them out of your mind totally. That's the idea. That during Bein HaShamashot, the question is, did you put them out of your mind totally? Okay. Now that's.
If we have a good reason, it's more permissible. If we don't have a good reason,
no, it doesn't matter the reason. The question is, was it muktzeh during Bein HaShamashot? Was it set aside? I mean, obviously, if there's a...
No, but not for the clothes example, like generally, for the category, like kelim shemalachtam le'eteh. I mean...
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can use them. As he says, you can be lenient about that issue. If you have a reason to flick a spoon because you want to show people how you're so dexterous with your fingers, that's okay. You're showing off. That's allowed on Shabbat. Oh, maybe you shouldn't show off. Play games with the children. That's a good enough use. Really, pretty much anything you want to use the vessels for. If they're not muktzeh, then the klish malachta heter is permitted. It's like food, clothing, as much as you want. Now this is an interesting thing. Let's say you're cracking nuts on Shabbat. Do you like peanuts? You shell them. Do you like what other type of nuts? Most common in Israel is
walnuts.
Sunflower seeds. Garinim shchorim, right? Sunflower seeds. So that's delicious. Is that borer? Well, if you take the food out from the psolet, with your hands and you do it miyad before eating it, it's fine, no problem. So you can eat your nuts, crack open the shell, take the food out. You can peel your orange, no problem. An orange is fruit, but it's not a nut. But same idea. What happens is that you have waste product now. That waste product is muktzeh. It was not designed for use when Shabbat came in. And what do you do with the shells? It's a problem. If you have, let's say, sometimes you serve some sunflower seeds or some nuts. Steve, I don't know if you ever do that. Yeah. So you put out two bowls, one filled with the seeds, and the other one is an empty bowl. What's it for? For the shells, for the debris. Even when you eat chicken, in some places they actually have a bowl in the middle of the table where you put your bones. Those bones are muktzeh. Nobody's going to eat them. They're waste products. So how can you move them? So you can't. So what some people do, my mother-in-law does this, it's very halachic thinking. When they put out the bowl, the empty bowl, for the shells, they don't leave it empty. They take one nut, which has food in it, and they put it into the bowl as well. And then the bowl will be a kli for things that are forbidden and also for something permitted. And so it doesn't become that you can remove the bowl because it has permitted stuff and forbidden stuff, as we said. Yeah, obviously the permitted stuff is more important than the junk. So that's a nice trick, how to get rid of the shells. But what if you didn't do that? You didn't think of it, but first put in, one piece of food into that, garbage. It's also a little bit wasteful, it's that one piece of fruit. It's not a great solution. So this is where you have to come to a very important category that is very useful. on Shabbat, and that is actually, it's a funny word in Hebrew. Most people don't understand it, but the word is for a bedpan. A bedpan, you know what a bedpan is, right? In the hospital, someone who can't get out of bed, he makes his
Number one, number two.
yeah, he makes his stuff into a pan that's on the bed, and then somebody can take it out and flush it down the toilet. Very useful, and it's kind of disgusting, right? So in the Talmudic times, they've got the same problem. People are not mobile, and they make into a container. That container has a name. It's called graf shel re'i. Re'i is excrement, and graf is a vessel, special vessel, designated for re'i. The Talmud said that's so disgusting. You can move it. You can move it to get rid of it. Called Shabbat. So it overrides the prohibition of muktzah, because essentially excrement is also waste matter that's not designated for use. It should be muktzah. It is muktzah, but there's a special permission, heter. Heter to remove disgusting things. Now this is what many posts can use to expand the repertoire. And it's not only a bedpan that's disgusting, sometimes the garbage bag gets filled and it's smelly. People change diapers, put it in the garbage bin. It starts to stink up the house. You could take the garbage bag, don't make a knot, definitely don't make a double knot. And whatever you do, take the garbage bag and throw it outside. How can you handle it? It's muktzeh. Because it's called graf shel re'i, it's something disgusting, there's a special permissibility. That's what number 12 says.
In the trash?
Sure, you can put it into the trash, sure. And also, by the way, that's what you do with the shells. To leave shells that somebody cracked on the table, it's not so polite. It's not so pleasant to sit there on a table with chicken bones that are used, half-eaten. That's disgusting to our sensibilities. If that's the case, you can get rid of it. You don't have to have something related with it. It's called something disgusting. So this is pretty much section 12. I said it outside, we don't have to read it inside. But that's the idea. A graf shel re'i. A bedpan. Okay, let's see if there's anything else very important.
We skipped number 11, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're gonna finish up here. One trick you should know, we said at the beginning today, and number 14, it says the permissibility of moving muktzeh indirectly or with the body. We said that at the beginning of the chapter. Now it goes back into the details a little bit. If you either minatzad, indirectly from the side moving it, or begufo, using a body part, that's allowed. When they move a muktzah item indirectly for a permitted activity, and when we move a muktzah item with his body, even for the sake of the muktzah item or prohibited activity. So, for example, page 182, the last paragraph.
Okay.
Yosef, you want to read for us? Minatzad, that's from the side or indirect. Go ahead.
Minatzad is accomplished by hand, but indirectly. For example, when they pick up a fruit covered with straw or dirt in a way that causes them to move. Since the muktzah items are moved indirectly through the permitted action of moving the fruit, and the purpose is permitted activity, eating the fruit, there is no prohibition. Similarly, if one wants to study Torah from a book that there's a pen lying on it, assuming the pen was forgotten there, so the book is not basis, see the section 5, he may pick up the book even though the pen will then fall off. Likewise, if one accidentally left coins on the pillow and he now wants to sleep on it, he may lift up the pillow so that the coins will fall off. If one accidentally left a rock on the top of the barrel and now wants wine from the barrel, he may tip the barrel and cause the rock to fall off. If the barrel is packed tightly among other barrels so that it cannot be tripped over, or if tipping it would break the barrel next to it, he may lift up the barrel while the rock is on the top of it and move it through. where you can slide the rock up without causing the damage.
Okay, so believe it or not, this principle is what allows us to sweep the floor on Shabbat. Go ahead. One may pick up a broom.
One may pick up a broom and use it to sweep up the dust or leaves, which are not safe. This is because one is doing it directly and not with his hands, but with a broom for a permitted purpose, so that the place will be clean. Similarly, if one wants to use a table, he may use a knife to move away shells that do not have status of graph shape, right? That have been left on the table.
Alright, so even if you have something that's not so disgusting, you can remove it indirectly, not handling it by itself, but move it with a knife indirectly. This is how we sweep. Again, sweeping is when we don't have dirt floors. In contrast, I'll take a question in a second, just skip one paragraph and go to the next. In contrast,
One may use part of his body to move the money and conceal it. For the entire prohibition of moving muktzeh on Shabbat is to do so in the normal manner, with one's hand. The sages do not prohibit moving muktzeh with the body. This includes moving with one's foot, his arm, his breath, or any other limb other than the hand. Therefore, if a money is lying on the ground, one may move it with his foot to conceal it. Similarly, if an item is lying on the ground and is at risk of being stepped on and broken, he may use his foot to move it out of harm's way. So too, if a drawer has become a basis but has an item in it which one needs, he may open the drawer with part of his body and remove the necessary item. One may sit on a stone or on the wood of a construction site, even though sitting down causes it to move. Similarly, one may lean on a car on condition that doing so will not set up a
okay, good. All right, now questions? Somebody wanted to ask before? Or you got it. Pretty much we've covered the last book, so that's it. Bezrat Hashem, I'm just aware of the timing. We're already, what did we do last night? Kiddush Lavana. Why did we do Kiddush Lavana? Why? It's the beginning of the month, while the moon is waxing. So we know that we had Rosh Chodesh, and we're getting towards, when's the last time you do Kiddush Lavana? 14th. And when's the earliest time you do Kiddush Lavana? Well, some say 3 and some say 7. 3rd of the month, and some say the 7th of the month. So you're Sfaradi and you said Kiddush Lavana last night? You didn't, because it's not the 7th. That means it's the 6th. So we're in the 6th. That means we have only 20 days till Chanukah on the 25th. Right? So 20 days, but we have a few days of Shabbat and Fridays, and so we're getting closer to Chanukah. So I want to finish up with the laws of Shabbat quickly, so I'm not reading everything inside. Okay, you'll forgive me. So that's it for Muktzeh. Let's open up our Sidurim now. Please, I want to sing 2 songs with you. Of course, we're going to pray for the hostages. They're always in our minds. And of course, there's so many soldiers killed. There's 6. They announced their names on Shabbat, and then another 2 this morning. Heart breaks. And of course, many people are still not in their homes. Over 100,000 Israelis are not living their normal lives, and we're not in regular times. So we're studying Torah, and that's to their success and merit, and of course to the neshamas of those who were killed. And we're praying for the hostages. So let's start on page 231, the last paragraph. And we'll sing Menachem, we'll pray together. Okay, everybody got it? Amen. Okay, we'll turn to the next page, page 232, 3, and we'll do the song today. That was today's song of the day. The David Mizmor, right? Hashem Ha'aretz Ha'Aman. I taught you the last part has a song in it. Many people sing at weddings, and other festive occasions. We're looking, what does it say? Lift up your heads, O gates. Be uplifted eternal doors, so that the King of Glory may enter. It's a celebration, envisioning how the Shekhinah will dwell with us once again. And the great King is going to come. Who's the King of Glory? Obviously Hashem. Hashem who is strong and mighty in battle, and also strong and mighty, and he's the King of Glory, of course, with the holiness which he brings. So if we do it over and over and over again, maybe we'll learn it.
We mix the two paragraphs? It's
We do. The actual song, it has the words from the first line and the words from the last line of this. There's 4 lines here, right? The 4 last lines. Se'u sharim hashechem v'hinasu pitchei olam is v'yavo melech hakavod is the beginning of the song, and then for the end of the song, the high part of the song, we go to the last line. We skip to the last line without the word who. We sort of skip out that word because it doesn't appear in the previous. Right, there's 2 answers. Mi ze melech hakavod is, you could say pasuk 2, and pasuk 4 is mi hu ze melech hakavod. We usually sing it just mi ze, and we read the last line. So the first line, meaning before the last line, and then the last line. Okay.
We just like the second who we say?
Yeah.
Adonai Hu Melech.
Yes, yeah, that we just. Se'u she'arim ha'shechem v'hinasu pitchei olam v'yavo melech hakavod selah. He added a selah for some reason. I don't know where that came from. It's sort of, there's a kavod selah at the end, as you can see from the last line. There's a kavod selah at the end, so it's customary the word hakavod. Let the King of Glory come. So we sort of corrupt the verses in the song, but it's okay. We'll get the hang of it. Se'u she'arim ha'shechem v'hinasu pitchei olam v'yavo melech hakavod selah. Mi ze melech hakavod asher tzevakot hu melech asher tzevakot hu melech hakavod selah. Dai nai la 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 Well done. All right. Hashem, we merit to see Hashem, the King of battle as well as the King of glory. Children on Shabbat, chapter 24, and then we'll try to finish up with one other law, chapter 30 as well. Chapter 24, children. Of course, we love our children. And there's even a mitzvah to teach children Torah. Page 187. Chapter 24, page 187. Okay? 187. You want to read for us a little bit? Is the Torah commandment?
The Torah commandment to teach Torah to children. To read, teach them to your children. The
Do you know where that comes from?
Shema.
It's in the Shema, exactly. Menachem, teach them to your children. Okay, the primary objective of this teaching is to ensure that children observe all the Torah's instructions. Study them and be careful to do them. Right? Why teach them? So that they can do them. So we have to teach the children. It sounds like we have to make sure that the children keep the mitzvot too. Therefore, the sages stated that alongside the mitzvah to teach children Torah, the obligation to educate them toward mitzvah observance. How could they be taught the mitzvah without getting used to keeping them in practice? Thus, there is a Torah commandment both to teach children Torah and to accustom them to keeping the mitzvot. Nevertheless, the actual observance of specific mode by the child is a rabbinic obligation. Okay, from what age? From what age?
Yeah.
As long as you understand.
As long as he understands. What age is that?
9 years old.
9 years old, okay. Moshe, your child, how old is he?
5.
5.
Mm.
Do you educate him to do mitzvah?
Yes, that's very hard.
It's very hard. What mitzvah do you try to get him to do?
What mitzvah? Shabbat, teach him what is mitzvah, also what can he do, what can he not do. Like not supposed to play the switch, the electric items.
When he gets dressed in the morning, how do you dress him in the morning?
Oh, how do I dress him?
Yeah.
When he wake up, ask him to go and wash hand.
Yeah. Puts on his pants.
Yeah.
What else?
He says Shema.
Says Shema in the morning. Wow.
Yeah.
Says Shema. Okay. What else? He puts on a shirt.
Yes, and put on zizi.
Oh, you put tzitzit on him?
Yes.
Oh, but he's only 5 years old.
Yeah.
Oh,
He still can do it.
So we'll see, it depends on what the mitzvah is.
Mm.
There's maybe you can do some teaching even before the child is 9.
Yeah.
Wearing the tzitzit, you don't have to understand too much, you just put it on, right?
Mm.
But the kid gets used to this. It's a normal mode of dress,
Mm.
right? So it really is different things that we try to do at different ages. Let's see, page 187 of the next paragraph. So, Israel, can you read the next paragraph? A child?
The child should be educated to keep the protected commandments from the time that he can understand what the mitzvah involved and can properly observe it. Choose the appropriate age for each mitzvah varies in accordance with its completeness and difficulty of its observers.
Thank you. Very good. So yeah, it depends. Different mitzvot at different ages. Skip to the next page. The age, on page 188 at the top, it says the age which we begin to educate children about mitzvah is about 6 or 7. That is when children start to study Torah in earnest. Begin keeping most mitzvah properly. This applies to brachot and prayers. Age of chinuch is 6 or 7. And that is when most children can begin to do them properly. Nevertheless, we begin habituating them, getting them used to recite brachot and prayers from around the age of 3, just as they start learning Torah at that age. The same principle. What about Shabbat? The same principle applies to Kiddush and Halacha. From the age of 3, we begin to encourage the children to come and listen. The child understands that he has Shabbat and can listen properly to Kiddush and Halacha, but make sure that he does so. If he's not present when Kiddush or Halacha is made, he should recite it himself. That's when he knows enough that he can realize you have to say, some words about Shabbat. And now that's easy. That's the positive commandments. Okay, there's not so many. Teach them you have to have a challah and kiddush. Very nice. What about the negative commandments? That's the hard part. Don't touch the muktzeh. That's the hardest part. Right? Because they're always touching this stuff. They don't know the difference between a pen and a book. They don't understand. So, number 2 says, yes, you want to read number 2 for us, please?
Educating children about negative commandments. It is means to train children to avoid prohibited activities from the time they begin to understand that certain things are permitted and certain things are prohibited. In other words, it is enough that the child
It is not enough.
It is not enough that the child understands that he must stop what he is doing when he is told no. Rather, he must understand that what he is doing is never allowed. Most children begin to understand this at approximately age 3. From then on, if one sees his child engage in prohibited activities such as eating non-kosher food or turning on a light on Shabbat, one must stop him from doing so. Once the child reaches the age of chinuch, when we start teaching him Torah at about age 6 or 7, one should begin to explain more about the principles behind the prohibitions, so that he will know how to observe them properly. There is no mitzvah to teach one's child who is younger than 3 to avoid prohibitions. Therefore, if such a child finds prohibited food and wants to eat it, or if he wants to turn a light on or off on Shabbat, one does not need to stop him for doing so. Similarly, if one small child is a Kohen and he goes to a place of ritual impurity, such as cemetery, one does not need to stop him, since he does not understand the prohibition. All of this refers to a situation in which the small child is acting autonomously. In contrast, if an adult causes a child, even a day-old baby, to do something prohibited, the adult violates a Torah prohibition. For the Torah commands not to cause a child to violate prohibitions. Thus, one cannot give a child blood or incense or bring a young Kohen into contact with ritual impurity. An adult may not even feed a child medically prohibited foods.
Okay, so there's a difference between what the child does on his own. Until he's 3, he does stuff. It's not your responsibility. It's not important. It's not significant in any way. There's no din of chinuch before the age of 3. But for you to actually buy non-kosher food and feed it to your baby, that's not allowed. You can't give him non-kosher food, and you can't force him to do melacha either. So.
Kohanim are never allowed to go to cemeteries.
That's right. Except for their mother or father or brother or sister. Then they are. Not for any other Jew. You're not allowed to do this.
Is their wife or their daughter allowed to go to cemetery?
Yeah. Just stay. Okay. Anyways. However, go ahead, Yosef.
However, it is not prohibited to give a small child an item that he might use in an impermissible fashion. For example, one may give paper to a small child on Shabbat, even though it is likely that he will tear it and destroy the letters that were written upon it, as if giving him paper is not considered the same as instructing him to tear paper. However, one puts a non-kosher food into a small child's hand, though it is considered feeding him, as this is normal way to feed a child. On Shabbat, there is an additional prohibition, for we are commanded not to have children undertake melacha on our behalf, but the 7th day is the Shabbat for Hashem. You should not do any melacha, you, your son, or your daughter. This means that if a child turns on a light because he thinks this is what his parents want, and his parents know and do not object, then in addition to neglecting the rabbinic mitzvah of chinuch, they are also transgressing a Torah provision by having their child to do melacha for them. If a child turns on the light for another Jew other than parent who sees him doing so and does not object, the Jew transgresses rabbinically. Even though he have seen that.
Okay, so stop for a second. So this is interesting. There's the mitzvah of chinuch applies to all mitzvot. There's a stage when we have to teach our children to be observant of all the mitzvot. Shabbat, in particular, is even more tricky, because it says in the Torah, you're not allowed to have your animal work on Shabbat, you're not allowed to have your servant work on Shabbat, you're not allowed to have your child work on Shabbat. So you have to doubly make sure that your child observes Shabbat, because it's your mitzvah. That's if they're doing melacha for you. You can't have them do melacha for you. Even if they're very young,
if they're over 6 or 7.
it sounds like even if they're less, if you actually instruct them to do melacha, so you're not allowed to do that. We said even for meeting regular din of chinuch, once he's 3, he understands what no means. So then you have to prevent him from doing melacha. And especially if it's for you. If he's doing it because he thinks the light needs to be turned on, you can see that the adults are all, oh no, what are we going to do? And he says, oh, I'll do it. And he goes, turns on the light. Not good. It's not good. From the age of 3. So when we mentioned the other day that sometimes a light that needs a switch that needs to be flipped or something, it's only a baby under 3. And even that, you should let him do it on his own. And the second issue is, very interesting, the mitzvah of chinuch applies from a father to a son. That's your own son. You don't have to go educate the rest of the world, and you do. Nice thing to be a shaliach. Every Jew needs to be taught. But you don't have the same level of obligation. That's what he's leading up to. In the next section, where he talks about okay, we're not going to get into all the details, but the idea is
But
we have to start educating your children to keep them in slow as well. And here you go, from the age of, Stephen, from the age, on page 190, he says, when the child has reached the age of chinuch, about 6 or 7, and he's involved in a game, does not want to hear kiddush, father must insist. So to educate him properly. However, the mother may occasionally ignore such breaches in order to maintain a pleasant atmosphere in the home. Very interesting, because the mitzvah to teach Torah has incumbent on the father. So there can be a little bit of flexibility there. Okay, we're not going to get into all the details here. But the main thing is, if you look at the bottom of page 191, we must stress the mitzvah chinuch must be done in such a way that the child will be receptive. One should not force a child to begin keeping all the mitzvot and saying all the prayers properly at the age of 6 or 7. The early years are meant to allow them to get used to praying and keeping mitzvot. This way, by the time children reach halach, mature the age of bar mitzvah, they will be capable of keeping all mitzvot properly. But if you force it before the child is ready, then he'll just have an anti and rebel. So you have a mitzvah to educate them, educate in a wise way, in a way of joy, and so the classic example is page 192, section 4. The lights went off in the home, and this is what I was saying to Shmuel, page 192, section 4. And the child understands that his parents would be pleased if we turn it back on. The parents must tell them not to do so. As we've already learned, parents have an obligation to educate their children to keep the mitzvot. This includes preventing them from transgressing prohibitions. Even, he says here, more than what I said, even if the child is not yet 3 years old, which is generally the age at which we begin teaching children to avoid prohibited activities, the law is more stringent for Shabbat. As long as the child understands that turning on the lights would be helpful to his parents, it is as if he's doing it for them, and they must prevent him from doing this based on the verse we cited above. Seventh day, you should not do any malacha, you, your son, or daughter. It means we are commanded to make sure that the children do not perform malacha on our behalf. Even if the lights went off in the neighbor's home, when the child goes over to turn on the lights for them, the neighbor must not allow him to do malacha for them. So, the question is, why do people think that it's allowed?
Because it doesn't damage the child's education. If it's already a baby and they have no concept, I mean,
There's no
Right.
reason not.
Right. But look at the next section, page 193. Sometimes, under pressing circumstances, one may tell a minor to transgress a rabbinic prohibition, but you may never tell a minor to violate Torah. First, as we saw regarding chinuch in general, the Torah forbids causing a child to transgress. Second, as noted, there is an explicit injunction against children doing malacha on Shabbat. We will now explain when one may ask a minor to transgress a rabbinic injunction. Okay, so first of all, this whole idea of using a child to do malacha, even in an indirect way, as we're going to see, it's only when it's rabbinic. And as you can see in the last paragraph, it says, under pressing circumstances, when we tell a child to transgress a rabbinic prohibition, even if he does not stand to gain from the transgression personally. As we've seen, the sages permitted transgressing shvut to shvut, so doubly removed from a Torah law, for the sake of a mitzvah or under pressing circumstances. The entire obligation of a child to keep Shabbat is rabbinic. So if he transgresses a rabbinic prohibition, it's by definition shvut to shvut. As long as one is lenient in this respect, only occasionally is no concern the child will become accustomed to belittle Shabbat. Okay, so the next paragraph is what we were speaking about before. If the light went on Shabbat, in a place where it's needed, a baby who's not yet old enough to understand what his parents want him, that his parents want him to turn on the light, about a year-old, who will play with a switch without understanding whether he's doing something helpful or harmful, may be held, you hold the baby in front of the switch, with the hope that he will play with it and turn it on, and removed, you take him away from there as soon as he turns it on. Since he does not understand the implications of flipping the switch on and off, his actions is not considered for the purposes of transgression, rather it is considered meat asek, performing the malacha obliviously. We learned about that originally. In any case, if you do have a need, it's better to get a non-Jew if possible. And the only allowance really is to have a baby who doesn't even know what he's doing. He'll just, casually flip any switch and touch anything that he's near. That can be allowed. But when you have a child who's a little bit older, who knows that he's pleasing you by turning on the switch, it's more problematic. It's allowed for a rabbinic. Only for a rabbinic violation if it's a great need, shvut to shvut, and that's, a lot of people get confused with that. They think, oh, he's under bar mitzvah, let him turn on the lights. No, you can't do that. For a child, it's even more significant because Shabbat, you have a mitzvah to teach your children and that they should not do any malacha for you on Shabbat. Just like you can't let your dog, your animal work for you on Shabbat or any other circumstance like that. You can't have people work for you on Shabbat, including your children. Okay, we're going to skip playing. We talked about them as we were talking about the different melachot. So, ball games, running, bicycles, scooters, skates, we spoke about it, but generally they're prohibited in most cases because of uvdin dechol, weekday activities. And some people allow children to have a little leeway there because they're just playing games. But as they get older, obviously you're going to want to teach them that you have to be like the adults. The adults don't do those activities, so then the child shouldn't either. But when he's much younger, you can have them play around as long as they're not violating any of the actual laws of Shabbat, not rabbinic, not biblical. And then all the issues are, the weekday atmosphere, so there's a little bit of room for flexibility. You have to see, it depends on your kid, right? Some kids are easier to occupy on Shabbat without screens, and some kids are harder. They need to run around, they need to do more strenuous type of ball play can be allowed. Also, depending on what age they are. Obviously, when they come to the age of 13, they're supposed to act like adults. That itself can be hard enough. So, chapter 25, we spoke about enough about asking a non-Jew. We said that it's prohibited to ask a non-Jew, but if you hint to him, or you just tell him that what the problem is, and he does it on his own, it could be allowed. Because really what's prohibited is the act of asking him, the talking to the non-Jew, asking him to do it for you, is what's prohibited on sages, by the sages. But if he does it on his own accord, then it can be permitted for the sake of great need. So let's move ahead. The last topic that we have to cover is Tchum Shabbat. Tchum Shabbat. That's chapter 30. And this is what most people don't know about. They think, oh, Tchum has something to do with Eruv. And Eruv really is the original word. It could be used for Tchum. But when we use the words Eruv, we mean we want to be able to carry. Inside, outside, in Rishut HaRabim. That's what we call Eruv. But originally that was not so common. That you had an area, the entire area was enclosed by Surat HaPetach, the frame of a door, sort of makeshift walls which we make. There's an additional prohibition on Shabbat, which is not about carrying. It's even about walking. Even if there's nothing in your pocket, you're not allowed to leave the camp. As the Jews were commanded explicitly. Perhaps this is one of the only Menachot that are explicitly mentioned in the Torah. We said there's lighting a fire, there's, what else is mentioned explicitly? We said Hotza'ah, but this is connected to this idea of Tchum. You're not allowed to take anything outside of the boundary on Shabbat. Tchum means boundary. So Tchumim. What's the boundary? It's 2,000 amot in every direction. What's 2,000 amot? An amot is about 50 centimeters, so it's about 1 kilometer. Right? You're not allowed to leave. Now, what does that mean to leave? Don't you walk to the Kotel? That's more than 1 kilometer. How can you leave? You're home. Halachically considered your home. It doesn't have to be your home. It has to be the community. It has to be a place of dwelling. We define the place of dwelling where anybody lives. So basically, you cannot leave the city limits more than 1 kilometer. That's the Tchum Shabbat, 2,000 amot. Sometimes you want to leave your town and go to the next town over. You're not allowed to, even if there's nothing in your pockets, because it's just too far. You cannot violate Tchum, the boundary of Shabbat. There's a lot of details here in chapter 30 that we're not going to cover. But you can see on page 299, we square the area, and then we can measure the 2,000 amot in each direction after we square it. So you get a few more. On the next page, you see the calculations here. How you can add the corners. A lot of maps, people like graphics. So also the Tchum Shabbat, see section 3 on page 301, is individual. So sometimes you might have a town or homes. Some people live in rural areas and they're far away from each other. If they overlap, each one has their own Tchum, because they're not really in a city that expands. It's basically you have your home and then no other homes for a kilometer. So if you have another home within a kilometer, then you can carry to him, he can carry to you. Not carry, walk to him and walk to you. But if they're farther, obviously you can't get to anybody. You can't walk outside of your Tchum on Shabbat.
We're just talking about walking.
Just walking, yeah, just walking, leaving the perimeter. If you're outside of any community, basically you have your 4 amot and then 2,000 amot in every direction. There's a lot of complicated details of the squaring the city, which we're not going to get into. But you should know that there is this prohibition to leave the Tchum. Obviously, cities can be in various configurations, overlapping Tchum, but now here's here's the trick. Here's the trick. This is what the original meaning of Eruv means. The original meaning of Eruv means that there is a method. If you look on page 313. 313. On the left-hand picture, in 313, you see a picture of a house that's in a city, and he's got 2,000 amot, but he wants to go somewhere farther, beyond that box. He's not allowed to. So what do on Erev Shabbat? You take some food, and you put it on the border, in that little square, near the border of the original box. And then, you essentially extend your house in that direction. That where you put the food before Shabbat comes. It's like during Benes Mashot. Like we learned about Muktzah, the defining time for this Shabbat is going to be every Friday afternoon, twilight. At that time, if you take some food, take some cake, we're going to see exactly what you have to, what constitutes an Eruv. Pretty much it's food. You make some meal, and you place it in that object. You go back to your regular home, and you have your first meal, your second meal. But tomorrow afternoon, I want to go for a walk in the northern direction. More than 2,000 amot. So on Erev Shabbat, I'm going to go to the border of the 2,000 amot. I'm going to put down some food there, declaring that as my home. So now on Shabbat afternoon, I want to go more than 2,000 amot. Essentially, I have 2,000 amot from my food. So it gives me an additional 2,000 amot, but it's only in that direction. As you can see in the picture, your new techum encompasses your home and the extra 2,000 amot that you want to go past the food that you placed. But it means you don't have 2,000 amot in the other direction. You lose out. Basically, where you place down your Eruv, that's your new home. And you have 2,000 amot in every direction from that new food. That's the concept of Eruv. Eruv Techumim. Extending your Eruv. Okay, so some details about that as well. And there's actually a bracha. Go to page 316. One who wishes to make an Eruv by placing food must set aside 2 meals worth of food. If bread is used, must be the amount of bottom 6 eggs. Want to use food which is eaten together with bread, and this is the trick. It is sufficient to use the amount of that food that would normally be spread on or eaten together with 6 eggs volume of bread. If the Eruv is meant to serve several people, 2 meals worth of food must be left for each person. If a large number of people are involved and would like to minimize the bulkiness of the Eruv, he may use olive oil, chocolate spread, or peanut butter. As relatively small quantities of these foods are used with a large amount of bread. So here in Israel is very common. Tchina. A little jar of tchina can serve maybe 100 people. Because you usually mix it up and you have just a little bit of tchina. It's very concentrated. So to make an Eruv, all you have to do is put a jar of peanut butter and tchina on the border of where you want to extend. And then 10, 15, 20 people, you can all walk together to the shir, which is out of town.
With no bread?
With no bread.
Just a scale?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the symbolic meal. And because it's the amount which is usually used with such a meal, even though the bread itself you can bring with you. Bring it with you from home. But it doesn't have to be placed down there where the Eruv is being placed. And okay, you have to, then you say a bracha. You see on page 317 in the middle. Baruch Hashem al mitzvat Eruv. And then you say, with this Eruv it shall be permitted for me to walk 2,000 amot from this place in every direction. And my son did this once. When he was a soldier. He was at an outpost guarding, and they didn't have a Sefer Torah. There was another unit, let's say 2 kilometers away. They knew on Shabbat morning he would have time, he would be able to go and visit them, and he wanted to go and daven with a minyan. So before Shabbat, he took a jar of china, I think it was, and he put it about halfway, a kilometer away, so that on Shabbat he was able to go, and he and his friends, whoever was off, they went to go and they davened with the other group. Even though it was outside of the Tuchum Shabbat, he could do that. He still was not allowed to carry it. Don't confuse the two things. If there's no eruv, if there's no wire or tzurat petach, he can't carry anything. So he was a soldier. He had to carry his gun, but he couldn't bring things in his pocket.
No siddur,
No siddur or anything like that.
talit,
Yeah, no. He could wear the talit, but he can't carry it. But he could go. He could go. You could walk outside the perimeter of the Tuchum. Okay.
They carry a siddur in an unusual way.
He could, maybe, yeah, he put it in his hat or something, if necessary. But I assume they have an extra siddur where he's going or something. You don't always need some items, but you know what's the last halacha I want to teach is a very cool mind experiment. Listen to this. Sages, they know what they were talking about. Very interesting. Until today, people are discussing this issue. What happens if, okay, you want to go, you hear the great rabbi's coming to a nearby town. And you want to go on Shabbat. You don't know, though, which town he went to. The town that's north of you or the town that's south of you. In your town, there's no great rabbi. You're stuck there. But you want to be able to visit. Okay, so you want to make an eruv to extend your perimeter. Tuchum, so you can walk not 2,000 amot, but essentially 4,000 amot in that direction. And then you'll be able to get to the shear. But wait, you don't know which town he's coming to, the town north or south of you. So you know what you do? You can put two eruvs, one on the north and one on the south, on the perimeter of your 2,000 amot. And you say, I'm going to make a condition. Now the eruv has to take effect on Erev Shabbat. So you have to have the food there for Erev Shabbat. But in your mind, you don't have to decide yet which. Basically, you'll say, if I find out that the rabbi came to the northern city, then the Erev that I placed in the north, that's going to be my home for this Shabbat. And I'll be able to move from my house to the Erev, and from my Erev to the rabbi. And I'll be able to go hear the great shiur. And if I find out on Shabbat, even though now I don't know, it's Friday afternoon, I don't know if the rabbi, if he's gonna, but I'll find out somehow in the morning. I'll find out that the rabbi came to the southern city. So then the eruv that I put in the south, that's gonna be my home. So you make a conditional eruv, which when you find out, which is true, it'll retroactively take effect when Shabbat came in, that is the eruv that you're allowed, that comes into effect, that you're able to go visit the rabbi. Just for example, very interesting, retroactive designation of an eruv is something that, which is very interesting halachically how that works. In any case.
Well, if the next day you go there, you lost the item already, so you cannot travel.
You cannot, yeah. The item's not there anymore. And you have to have access to it. You don't have to eat it, but it has to be available. You cannot put it in a place which you won't have access to it. For example, on Erev Shabbat, climb up on the tree. You don't want the animals to get it. Climb up on the tree, and you put it high up in the branches. Great idea, right? No. On Shabbat, you're not allowed to climb the tree. So you won't have access to your food. It's a useless eruv.
You couldn't knock it out of the tree?
If you could, throw balls at it. You can't throw rocks at it. They're not. So yes, don't put the eruv on a tree that you won't have access to. It has to be accessible. And if an animal comes and eats it, and you find out, you come up to the eruv because you're going to pass it now to go an extra 2,000 and you see, uh-oh, it was eaten by the dogs. That's it. No good anymore. I'm pretty sure. Let me just check. And I'm right about that. It's kosher if it was there on Erev Shabbat. Even if the animal eats it later on, as long as it was there during the Benash Mashot, I think that was established as your home, even if the food happens to have been eaten. Yeah, that's what it says on page 317. Once it was established at the beginning of Shabbat, then it's okay, even if. But if during Benash Mashot you weren't allowed to climb the tree during Benash Mashot, so then you put it in a bad place from the get-go. That's what's prohibited. That's not a kosher eruv. So that's really what eruv means. We use the word eruv for the tzurat hapetach, for what we have, the enclosure, the enclosure that so we can carry inside our towns and our cities. Turn to page 320, please. May we all be privileged, except Shabbat, joyously, to observe them properly, become sanctified on them by remembering our faith, to spend them studying Torah, to enjoy them through food and song, and our soul be illuminated by a twofold light. May its light suffuse our entire week, and blessing extend to all our works from the realm of Shabbat, to whom Shabbat, and may we merit complete redemption speedily in our day. Well done.
See you.
See you. Yeah, we'll have a party tomorrow.